Thank you for joining in. Today, we'll talk about an interesting and highly impactful application of AI. Let me get started with a story. This was 1981, the summer. A kid was born in central India. He was born into a poor family, and he was the youngest of four siblings. When he was 5 years old, he went to a nearby train station with his brother. And there, unfortunately, he got separated from his brother. And he was trying to find him, got into one standing train, and soon fell asleep. When he woke up, he saw that the train was moving. He was terrified. And finally, when the train came to a halt, he was over 1,000 miles away from his home. Completely new city, he was completely lost. He was lucky to survive for a few weeks, and eventually he was adopted by Australian couple. And his journey again took a different turn, and he moved a few more thousand miles away from his hometown. So even as he began his new life, he always used to think about his hometown, his family, and the imagery around him. And many years later, he came across a tool called Google Earth. This tool had images of every place on Earth. So frantically, he started searching for any image of his hometown, the railway station, anything that he could remember. But it was like looking for a needle in many, many haystacks. But luckily, many years later, he did stumble upon one picture which reminded him of the train station he got lost in. So that made him look a little more closely at that particular town. And slowly, the memories started flooding back. So then he realized that that might be the place where he was born. So he packed his bags and took his journey, and he got to India. And there, very eagerly, he reached the place, but he found that the house was abandoned. He was heartbroken. He inquired with the neighbors around. They took him to a woman and said that was his mother. So it was a happy family reunion. And this was made into an amazing movie, a Hollywood movie called Lion. So here we have the hero of the story, Google Earth and satellite imagery, which also happens to be the hero of our presentation. So here we have the boy who has started looking at the images manually for years and years together. We'll see how AI can help with similar kind of applications. And when you talk about satellite imagery, there are several unexpected applications one can come across. It can help us understand how cities grow. And when nature declines, you've lost rivers, we've lost a lot of greenery. We can track and see what has been happening. It has helped us adopt solar power in cities and homes. And in case of natural disaster, it is helping get the first aid quickly to the needy people and the needy places. And recently in the pandemic, when people were in quarantine, it was helping to check the mobility, understand where it was followed, where it wasn't, and where some support could be provided. So all of these are unexpected applications. We will be talking about one such very impactful application. In today's presentation, you'll learn three things. One, understand about a crisis which humanity is facing today, and what is the innovation that can solve it. And second, how technology can help scale this innovation. And number three, we will look at a real life implementation, how it has actually been done and how it is saving lives. Quick introduction, I'm Ganesh Kesari, co-founder and chief decision scientist at Gramner. At Gramner, we solve business problems by presenting insights as stories. Two things we do very good: machine learning, AI, and data storytelling. We help our clients, over 100 plus clients around the world. And I'm passionate about simplifying data science for everyone. I speak and write to further this mission. I'm a TEDx speaker and a Forbes contributor. So before we get started, I have a quick poll for all of you. So here's the link. 1 minute. Okay, this is okay. I'll share the link shortly. So let me get started with the first part of the section. We'll come back to it. What is the crisis that humanity is facing today? A question for all of you. What is the most dangerous animal on our planet? You can type into the chat window. I'll pause for a few seconds. I would like to get some reactions. I'm going to the chat window. Humans, okay. Very true. It's somewhere at the top. Any other guesses? Sharks. Yes, it's a common answer. Hippo, musk. Okay, someone got it right. So here is the answer. Mosquito. Yeah, a couple of people got it right. While sharks and all of these other seemingly deadly creatures are around, mosquitoes kill over 1 million people every year, and humans are second. Mosquito-borne diseases, dengue, yellow fever, are a major risk hazard in the tropical countries. Dengue alone infects over 400 million people every year across 100 countries, and almost 40% of the world population is impacted by dengue. But there are several organizations which are working to control this menace, and World Mosquito Program, WMP, has an innovation. How do you prevent infection from mosquitoes? We first infect the mosquitoes. So they inject a naturally occurring bacteria into the eggs of mosquitoes, and thereby the mosquitoes lose the ability to carry deadly diseases. And when they mate, their offspring lose the ability as well. So you can see how this eventually can spread. So WMP injects these modified mosquitoes into the wild strategically and at different locations. Over time, they start replicating, and eventually they replace all mosquitoes in the wild. Will it work? It all sounds great. Are there success stories? Yes. This has worked in northern Queensland, again in Australia, just a coincidence. So they picked up some cities. Here's one city, Cairns, and they did some interventions. They worked with the community and the authorities and the backyards, and several places they started releasing these modified mosquitoes. What were the results? In about 8 years, when they monitored this, the locally acquired dengue cases dropped to almost zero. And they say that in Australia, the cases are at a low of almost 100 years. So this is how fascinating this innovation can be in controlling these infections. So here's the process, the entire workflow. You start by identifying a country and then a city. And then within the city, you need to identify those specific strategic locations, those communities where you need to release the mosquitoes. Once you identify the places, you need to work with the authorities, work with the community to make sure they are comfortable. Because here we have some people coming in and releasing mosquitoes into the wild. They shouldn't be terrified. And once you get all of that support, then you have to start working in the lab to rear the mosquitoes. This is high precision engineering. It's costly, slow, and it is a very complicated process. Once you have these mosquitoes, surgically, you release them in different locations and you monitor them across weeks because you need to establish that curve and replace all the wild mosquitoes. So this is the workflow which they have followed and perfected. What is one of the biggest challenges in this workflow? It is the scoping. Why is scoping an issue? Let us take a place like this. So this is an image where you have some settlements you can see, and there's a lot of greenery. So firstly, it's a resource-intensive process to identify all of these details, the data, the images, and do some surveys. Second, it needs specialists, statisticians, and GIS who will manually go through some of these images from a few years back and prepare it periodically. Operationally, choosing the right release points in a large city can be tough. It's an optimization problem. And there's a risk of missing human settlement areas. Imagine from this cluster, you miss out some few high density areas. And it requires frequent revisiting. Imagine you release mosquitoes in those greenery, that it's going to go waste and you'll have to keep fine tuning it and correcting it. So this is why it is difficult. And that brings us to the second section. How do you identify the population count? So early last year, 2019, a lot of enterprises approached us to get estimates of demographics for consumer survey and few other enterprise purposes. That's when we started looking at satellite imagery to see what we can do with that, because some of the existing sources the clients were using, like survey sensors, were just not scalable. Census particularly is inaccurate. It's about 10 years old anytime. And it is expensive. The 2020 US census is expected to cost over $12 billion. And there are logistical issues. People have to go door to door survey in spite of the online presence. And during pandemic, it is extremely tough. So when we started looking at the satellite images available, they map the entire Earth. Right? So we have 24/7, they monitor it. Now, what do we put these satellite images to better use, right? So we were frustrated that satellite imagery are more helpful for pizza delivery than for delivery of emergency services. So we looked at some of the existing work. Last year, there was a paper published by Stanford University. That was our inspiration. We went beyond that, and we wanted to predict the quality of life from satellite imagery just by using that. So we took up moderate resolution satellite images from Landsat, Google Earth Engine, and we took up some survey data for a small locality where it was done at a very, very granular level. We used that with the images to train the models, deep learning models. And with that, the model is able to score some of the parameters like population density, wealth levels, infrastructure availability, and even factors like toilet access. So here are the results. The model is able to predict the wealth levels. What you see on the left-hand side is actual versus what you see on the right is a predicted one. The model was getting it fairly good. And it even estimated toilet facilities. If you're wondering how, in developing countries, not everyone has uniform access to flush good toilets. So what we found was that the roofing and the kind of building quality was a good indicator of the access to toilet facilities. So that also was possible. So this opened our eyes, and we were pretty excited about this work. And we demoed this let me just quickly show you this demo. We demoed this in O'Reilly, London last year. And here's what the demo looks like. So you choose a latitude, longitude, or you pick a city, and then it picks the images, satellite images from whatever duration, which year it was last available. And then you choose the metric you want to predict, wealth, population density, and so on. And then the model starts scoring it, and it creates a grid of the city and identifies which of those are, like, green is high in that factor, for that factor, and red is very low. So it was fairly good. And around the same time, we met the World Mosquito Program team, and we thought this was a great match to solve their problem. So that brings us to the final section of the presentation. How do we save lives? So we took the existing pilot, the approach, and we extended that. Now, for this purpose, we needed even more high resolution images. So earlier I mentioned we used moderate resolution. Now we went down to 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter resolution. So these are the three steps. Once you get the satellite images for a given location, for a particular city, then we start detecting the buildings. We identify the building footprint, and from what you see on the left to the right, I'll talk a little bit more on this. And then once we detect the buildings, second thing is detecting the greenery, places where people are not likely to be in big numbers. And then we combine these with a gridded population data at a 1 kilometer level to identify the population for each of those microgrids, the 100-meter square level. So here's how these three steps work. First, we have the picture, and we trained a deep learning model, which was able to identify the contours, estimate the area, count the number of buildings. So that's the current work. And then step two is detecting the hidden features, which is like the greenery and other water bodies. Let us say you have a picture like this on the left-hand side. From this, we can detect the green cover, which is what is extracted and shown there. Water cover, you can see the water bodies, and the land cover. And when you combine these, you get an image like this. So we add the building footprints, which is going to be an indicator of population density. And we subtract some of those greeneries because there the population is likely to be less. When we combine all of this, then we bring it into the third step, which is using the gridded population of the world, GPW data, and all of these other inputs to come up with, down to a grid level, what is the population for each grid, high to low. And here's an example. So this is the actual input satellite image, 50 centimeter resolution. You have the housings you can see, and then there is a stadium. And when this is passed to the model comes up with an output like this. So it identifies those grids. The blue ones are the high population ones, and orange is the low population one. So you don't want to be releasing mosquitoes in the stadium. People may not like it. So this is how it is able to estimate to a fairly good level of accuracy. And then when you zoom out, you go down to the city level. And now you have this, the model rolling all of these details up one level. And this is what the grids look like, tinier. And you still have those blue and the orange shaded ones with the population. And finally, the last leg was just optimizing and picking those specific localities, named localities. So here's how the full solution works. It all comes together. Now, first, the WMP team, they choose a country and a city. Say, okay, they're going to implement this, for example, and say Orlando in Florida. And so the question is, where should we release? What all communities within Florida, within Orlando, should we release this in? So that input of the city name is given to the solution. And it picks all of the data, extracts the images, and then it runs the model, which automatically scores, extracts the building footprints. And then it combines and does the population estimation. So we come up with what we have seen, those grids with those squares. The last the last item needed for the decision making is, what percentage of population do I want to cover? If I want to, in phase one, if I want to cover 50% of the population, so that I estimate that based on the number of mosquitoes I'm able to rear. So if it is 50%, we find out what area should be covered. So for example, 50% might be 20% of area, whereas to go to 80%, I might have to increase this to 60% of coverage. So they can choose, and that's where I mentioned it is an optimization problem. They can choose what is the right level based on the number of people we want to reach out to. So this is how the solution works, and they use this for site planning decisions. What's the outcome? Earlier, I mentioned about the manual process. That used to take almost 3 weeks for people to manually collect the data, GIS experts to work on it and prepare all of it. And that has been reduced to just 2 hours. So over 99% savings in time. Not just the time savings, but also effectiveness. So earlier it was slightly old satellite images, not very accurate estimation. Now we have up-to-date, high-resolution satellite images like 50 centimeter square level. And this is able, the model is able to come up with the population estimates far more accurately. We found out in our tests. And the efficiency overall, even after you release the first set of mosquitoes, the post-release monitoring and validation, it has to be done periodically. It's very, very efficient. You can do it multiple times. And there are some of those activities which can be done real time as well. So this solution now is being rolled out across several countries. And Microsoft and World Mosquito Program have made some press releases, and there are some major plans being chalked out. And this is something which we are very excited about. The project has gone live. So I started with a story. Let me conclude with a personal story. So this was about 10 years back. I used to live at that time in north of India, in Delhi. And it was the same month, October. One day when I came back from the office, I saw that my wife was running a temperature. So an hour later, we saw that this temperature shot up to almost 104 degrees. So we panicked, immediately rushed to the emergency care. And we found out that there are no real symptoms of any of these, the known diseases. So for a few hours of treatment, after that, the fever subsided, we came back home early in the morning. So when we thought everything was all right, the next day, same pattern repeated in the night. Again, fever shot up. So we got really worried, and the doctors advised us to take some tests. So we tested for dengue and few others, it all came negative. For the next 5 days, but the same pattern continued. High fever, a few hours, again came down. And a week later, we repeated the tests, and we found out this time it came positive for dengue. So this was also the monsoon time. A lot of cases were there in that locality in India. and there were just no spaces in the hospitals. So we had to really try a lot to even get an admission. So 3-4 days hospital, and eventually my wife recovered. Fortunately, we came back home. But this experience of almost 10 days left a deep impact. So imagine the millions of people. We talked about 400 million people impacted every year. People who don't have access to as good healthcare or facilities. You would be going through, the families will be going through a lot of trauma, and many people don't survive. So that actually, with that experience, and when I look at the project and the impact, I'm very proud of the fact that at Gramna we have participated in this, and particularly AI can help with such an impactful solution. So at Gramna, we have been applying AI for good in several areas, like healthcare like this, and other saving of endangered species. I've linked to this in the deck. The deck will be made public. So take a look. So hope you found this session useful. Thank you for listening in. Thank you.